Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Decker team. I'm Yetta Decker.
And I'm Ken Decker.
And together,
we make up part of the Decker team.
Much better. We're getting better at this. We're so happy that you've joined us today. Today we're going to talk about a different kind of property. It's a freehold, which is what a single family home typically would be, except this one, or it could be a townhouse, it could be a freehold townhouse. This particular one that we're going to talk about today, hopefully for the entire show, so you're going to learn all kinds of things you didn't even know you needed to know, and that is a freehold with condo elements. So Ken, what is that?
That's a strange beast. Because what happens is the title of the actual home is freehold.
And freehold would be the way most property that's a single family or a townhouse, if it's not a condominium townhouse, would be registered in Ontario.
Yeah, and usually they're registered fee simple, which is the highest level of ownership. It's the highest level of your own rights, your rights of ownership, okay?
Of a property, of real property,
right,
which is real estate.
And condominium, what you're saying is I own the condominium, the actual building, the inside, and then the condo elements, the condominium, the common elements in the condominium are typically the exterior of the property, the roof, maybe the fences, the roads, and the park and the grass and all of the land. Now, what we're finding is, even in areas like Greeley, where you're buying a beautiful property, single-family home on a half-acre lot, and there's still condo elements. Now, those elements might be a man-made pond, a swimming pool.
Is that not just an association fee?
Yes, it's called an association fee.
Okay.
Right? But they're still common elements. And because they're common elements, they fall under the Condominium Act, and therefore...
Even if it's not a condominium per se?
Yes. Even though the title of the house is fee simple, freehold, those elements are condominiumized.
And so if I'm a buyer, why... Well, okay, so it's a little confusing, or maybe a lot confusing.
Yes, and a lot of realtors get confused too.
Right? And so beyond it being confusing, why does it matter to me if I call it an association fee, so I know it's going to be $350 a year, or in some cases, I guess, it would be even $100, $150 a month. So it could be $1,200, $1,500, even $1,800 a year for this either association fee or a common elements fee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, first of all, you want to know that that's there so that you're going to budget for that payment, that you're going to have to make that payment all the time. And it may go up, so you have that.
Because you don't have control over that.
You do not have control. A management company looks after those elements on behalf of all the owners in the association.
And can I opt out of the association?
No.
That was fast.
No, you can't.
Okay.
You cannot opt out.
If I want to purchase in that community...
You're going to be a part owner of those common elements, and you have to pay into the association fee to maintain them. Now...
Sometimes it's called a maintenance fee.
Yeah. And
there's so many different terminologies for the same payment.
Yes. And it varies wildly what might be included in there. As soon as there's a common area that people have use of, you need insurance because someone might get hurt. Someone might drown in the pool. Someone might fall and break their leg on the sidewalk. Someone playing tennis might get their hand stuck in the fence or something silly. And it's unbelievable what you could be, a claim against your insurance. So you have to have insurance to protect the homeowners.
And when you say you have to have insurance, it's not you as an individual in that case.
No, the management.
It's the management company would purchase insurance for all of the common area.
Yes,
Okay.
for the people that use it, but also even for someone that may be using it that doesn't live there, that came on and used it, or just was visiting somebody and tripped on something that was a common element. Now, that's the idea where there's parks and pools or tennis courts or things like that.
Or private roads.
Private roads, you see. And does
everybody even know what a private road is? I mean, I know before I was in real estate, I just thought private was another word for a crescent or cul-de-sac or something like that. Not that it really change the legal term in relation to the street.
Yeah, and it really does.
It
and
does.
so it's your first clue. If you're looking at a property for sale and it says, some name private, that means that the road is not the responsibility of the city. The city has
So the
not
city
taken
didn't
it
put
on.
the asphalt on it, the city didn't compact
No, but the city
it.
doesn't do that anyways in subdivisions.
Okay, so who does that in subdivision?
The developer.
Okay.
But they do it to the city's specifications, and then
the city
once it's
takes
done,
responsibility.
the city takes ownership of that land and the road system on it, and they take responsibility for maintaining it, plowing it, salting it, sanding it, fixing potholes, repaving, whatever it needs. The city now says it's our property, we'll look after it.
Right, except when we're talking about a private, that's not true.
That's exactly right.
Private actually means it's privately owned.
Yes.
Not just another nice name
Right.
for
So that
cul-de-sac.
is one of those elements that now there needs to be a management company that will plow it, patch it, maintain it, all of that sort of stuff. And there may be other grass areas that are part of it. There may be ditches, culverts, whatever.
There may be a park area or trees
Exactly.
or exterior fencing. Would that fall in underneath that?
It could, but typically it wouldn't be the fencing around the yard. It would typically be maybe dividing something else, or dividing
Or an
a
entrance
roadway.
pillar or something into the development?
Yeah,
into
exactly.
the private, so to speak?
Yes, that kind of
Okay.
thing. The signage for coming into that development,
Community.
that
Yeah.
community would be covered under that management. So here comes the issue. The issue becomes people think they're buying a freehold property.
And they are, aren't
with
they?
Yes, with an association fee, which they are, but that association may have some problems. It may have some skeletons in the closet.
Well, wouldn't that be common knowledge? Wouldn't that just be public knowledge?
No. It's knowledge that the owners in the association would know, because they will get monthly, or could be monthly or bi-yearly or yearly
So somebody
meetings.
owning the house, wanting to sell it, would they not have to tell that to somebody wanting to purchase the home?
If they know about it,
Okay.
and a realtor's involved, and the realtor finds out, the realtor must disclose it. If they're selling privately, they don't have to disclose anything.
Not even if they're asked?
Well, yeah, if they're asked and they hide it, then yes. But as
I guess-
buyer beware.
Right. And I guess the average buyer wouldn't really know to even ask that question.
Exactly. Whereas the realtor's there to protect you and keep you safe.
Right. When I see private, I know little alarm bells go off and I have more questions to ask about the property.
Exactly.
And to understand about the common elements.
Right. And extra clauses to write into the offer
If I'm helping a buyer.
to protect the buyer
That's right.
in the purchase of that property, so that they have time to do their due diligence, for us to request a status certificate, which is kind of weird because normally you would request a status certificate on a condominium titled property. But because this has kind of two titles almost, you still need to
It's one
request
title,
a
is it not?
condominium. Well, you need to request the status certificate for that for those common elements. There was recently a case in.
Is this a nice story?
All my stories are nice.
Okay. Well, if you're just joining us today, you're listening to Ken and Yetta Decker of the Decker team, and you're listening to the Inside Track on Real Estate. Today, we're talking about freehold ownership with association fees or common elements, a condo elements. And so Ken's just about to share one of his favorite stories. Not a happy one, but one of his stories.
It's not a favorite story. I
You-
have
all your
stories,
stories
and it's
are
my
favorites.
favorite to say them.
Exactly.
Yes. So, this particular case, someone bought a property. It wasn't a cheap property. It was in the Toronto area, about an $800,000 property. And it had a common element association fee to it because it was on a private road structure. Now, you might ask, why would a person that's building an $800,000 property, now mind you, that's a townhouse in Toronto in some areas, put it on a private road? Well, private roads allow a couple things. They don't have to build them to as high a standards as the city requires, and they don't have to be as wide. So when you're tight for space, sometimes a developer will decide to go with private roads because they can fit in more houses in their section of land.
Right, and it's worth setting up the association fee and passing along those expenses to the homeowner anyway.
Yeah, because they're not paying it ultimately.
Right, because they've got to pay for the road development initially.
And it's actually
either
cheaper.
way, and this is going to be less expensive than if they actually had to develop a road to city standards.
City standards, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why the developer does it. Now, in this particular case, the offer was done, and the offer was done on a residential freehold offer form.
Which is that not commonly
Typically
what people
done.
do them on?
Yes, typically done. Now, if it had been done on a condominium form...
But it's not really a condominium.
No, but there are a couple clauses on that form that would have protected that particular buyer. And those clauses state that the seller warrants that they are not aware of any special assessments and that there are no legal proceedings occurring within that management company in regards to those common elements.
Now, can we just talk about special assessments a little bit? I'm going to take Ken off track again because, as you all know, if you've been watching us for any length of time, I'd love to do that, but he loves to do it to me too. So in relation to special assessments, what does that mean? What is that?
Okay, well, a special assessment means, oops, really. It means we said we'd be able to manage the property for X amount of money, whether that's $50, $100, $200 a month, whatever the condo fee was, and then something...
Or the association fee.
Yeah, or the association fee, and something went wrong. We didn't budget enough, the asphalt cracked prematurely, we have to resurface all the private roads 5 years before we thought we would.
It's just happened in one of the developments in Ottawa, actually.
Okay, well, there you go. So we have to do it early, so the reserve fund that we've been building up from all these payments from all the people that use this road isn't large enough to pay for that road. And the management company can't take on a loan and say, okay, we're going to borrow the money and then we'll pay the loan payment based on the payments. Doesn't that work that way? They got to pay cash. So they go to all the owners that use that road and say, okay,
all the ones that are obligated because they own a property within the development.
Yeah. Okay. So we need an extra $200 each, or we need an extra $500 each, or we need an extra $1,000 each.
Or $10,000.
Or $10,000. Sometimes it's, on a high rise, it's a balcony that's, all the balconies need to be replaced and everyone gets hit with a special assessment.
Or the brick was falling off the building and not done correctly.
Right. There's lots of different things. So looking at those common elements, what maintenance they need in the future and how much reserve fund they have will tell you whether the management company is in good shape to look after those, and we won't expect to get any special assessments. So special assessments are typically for a short period of time, and they make up the shortfall from the reserve fund for maintenance issues.
Right, and so they could be amortized over maybe a 3-year period. It could be if there's a $3,000 fee due, they might spread that out in quarterly installments of $250 a quarter throughout a year, or they may ask for it a little bit sooner. Yep. But often they'll spread out when it comes into the thousands over a couple of year period.
Yeah, because the management company doesn't want to give their owners undue hardship, but now they're going to put interest on it. If they're going to spread it out, typically they're going to put interest on it, so some owners may choose to pay it off sooner and not pay any interest
Right,
on
and if you're purchasing a home, it's something to really be very aware of, because within a development it may look like two homes are priced competitively to one another, and yet when you look at the fine print, or your realtor looks at the fine print, it's discovered that there is a special assessment that's due and payable over the next 3 years, and one homeowner is not taking any responsibility for that special assessment, and the new homeowner, the person purchasing, is going to have to pay that after they move in.
Right.
And in another case, the seller may say, you know what, it increases the desirability of my property. I understand the condo setup, and maybe I'm on the board and I think it's fair and it's just, and I'm going to pay that in advance. So what may look like the same purchase price isn't. So an important piece to really be aware of. Mm-hmm. I know I just did one last week, And that was exactly what we dealt with. And we chose as a homeowner, the homeowner chose, to pay it out in advance so that it didn't complicate or reduce the desirability or the saleability of his property. And we sold it in a matter of days. So it was it worked.
And so now I'm going to take us back on track, because this is the inside track on real estate. Yetta took us on a side track, and now we're back on the main track, which was about this story in Toronto that I'm trying to talk about.
I like my story too.
I know. So this story, they didn't use a condo form, which would be typical. They would use a freehold form.
However, if they had used it, there was protection.
There was protection built in. That's right.
Otherwise, they would have to add their own
special clause on the Schedule A, which would say basically this offer is conditional upon the buyer at their expense receiving a copy of the condo status certificate for the common elements.
And all of the documents relating to that.
Yes. And
association.
then, yeah, I'm giving you the short.
Oh, well, I like the
short
long
version.
one.
And then they having time for their lawyer to review those documents.
Discuss it with them.
Discuss it with them, and then saying yes or no, they want to go ahead with the purchase. Because it had these elements that the person overlooked, they didn't put anything in the Schedule A. So there was no protection in the offer at all in regards to the
or not even
elements.
Was there even a disclosure that there was such a fee?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a disclosure.
The buyer was well aware that there was
an
an
association
fee for the common elements. In this case, it was roadway and some different little things like that. Now, what happened was the lawyer did up all the paperwork, got very close to closing, and because there were common elements, decided that he needed the status certificate for that.
Rightly so.
Right.
Because it ought to have been requested
when
the original agreement was presented.
Mm-hmm. So now he gets the documents and he finds out that there was a big problem. The management company took all the money. So they defrauded the company out of all the reserve funds. So now the reserve fund is zero, and there's a legal battle going on. There's a lawsuit against the management company from the ownership group.
And was that happening even before the offer was put in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But because they didn't ask for the documents, nothing was disclosed.
And did the homeowner even know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
That wasn't talked about in the story. But in this particular case, what now happens is the buyer is in big trouble because they have to close on a property that there is no reserve fund for these common elements, and there's going to be significant assessments involved, special assessments,
because now they've lost
unless
the
they
money.
can get their court battle and get the money back.
But even then, the court battle is going to cost a lot of money. So there's going to be special assessments anyway.
Exactly. So it's buyer beware. So if you're thinking about buying a house by yourself without a realtor, I might recommend think again. There are so many pitfalls out there. We've talked about a lot at different shows, but this is one that really could hit home and hit the pocketbook in the end. Right. So that's common elements. Watch out for them. They're all over the place. And a
good tip is really to watch for the word private attached to the street description. It by no means is the only way to know that there's common association fees or element fees. Mm-hmm. There's also common use agreement, which is something that exists sometimes in a property where there actually isn't a fee established by a management company, but in fact just a document that's registered on title. So this is another little nuance that is an anomaly out there. There's not a lot of them, but certainly we've sold quite a few of them over the years because there's some in the Ottawa area. And so in that case, it's really just the homeowners agreeing to pay their monies. It could be for snow removal of common area. It could be for a well, the hydro for a well that is shared. It could be for a joint septic system and for maintenance of that septic system. So rather than being money that's set aside every year, so there's no management company, but in fact there's still a common use agreement. So that's another nuance that probably most people haven't heard about or thought about. So again, another thing that you want to be protected against, or at least to understand it. So if you're walking into a situation where that's the case, and it may mean it's the best house for you or the best property because it fits your price range. It fits your location. It may fit the amenities that you're looking for. So it may be exactly where you need to be. So it's not that they're bad. They're phenomenal, provided you understand them and you catch the nuances and the intricacies, really is the right word, of these different types of associations and ownerships.
And there's some risk involved there. There's some properties in Metcalfe, in the village of Metcalfe, and a few in the village of Osgood that have shared septic systems, and they have a common use agreement registered on title for that I don't know what to call it, piece of equipment, the septic system. And if something goes wrong with it, then the owners are all equally responsible. And in one case, there's 2 owners that share a septic, and in another case, there's 4 owners that share a septic system.
They're large septic systems.
Yeah, they're large, but they're equally responsible for the replacement of that septic system.
Even if one of them is the one that does harm to the septic.
Yes. Even if one of them causes harm to the septic by flushing the wrong thing down the toilet or whatever. The difficulty becomes, let's say the septic is done and there's...
Meaning it's not functioning correctly
Yeah,
anymore.
it's either backing up into the house or there's sewage coming out of the ground. And those people have to agree on what replacement type they're going to use. So they have to come together, the 4 people or the 2 people, and decide which system are we going to put in, and get some quotes and decide what style, how expensive. And then on top of that, each one's got to come up with the money, whether it...
Right, because there's no reserve fund here.
No.
There's just a common use agreement.
So if it's $25,000 or $30,000 and there's 4 people, that maybe $5,000 to $10,000 each that they have to come up with. Now, what do you do if one person's broke and all they can do is pay their mortgage payment? They don't have any money. They can't get any more money. Now you got a problem. So you certainly got to be aware with your eyes wide open when you get into that type of
right, and
ownership.
yet, like I said a few minutes ago, it may still be your best option because those homes may be selling at just over $200,000, whereas something that doesn't have a common use agreement and you don't take on any liability might be closer to $300,000.
Exactly.
And so it's offset often by the cost of the property. And yet you've got to understand it.
Okay, so you ready for a curveball?
I know what this one is.
I think that was a fastball. You know what it is?
I'm thinking we're talking about leases.
Not leases. It's like a lease, but not really.
Okay.
It's what we call a life lease. And a life lease, now we're in a totally different topic here, folks, so if you're thinking condo and common elements and all that sort of stuff, take that out of your brain. We're switching topics.
Just for a few minutes.
We're going to talk about life leases because there's some advertisement out there for some of these, and people, seniors are the ones that typically will buy a life lease. Usually you need to be 60 years of age or older.
Or 55 or 50, depending on the development.
Yeah, you need to be older anyways.
Well, you're 50.
Just slightly older than me. And a life lease is, how can I explain it? It's kind of like buying a condominium. You're not responsible for the property. You get to live in it for your life. You pay a certain amount of money up front. So rather than go and rent a senior's home or an apartment or something, a room residence, or something like that, what they do is they will be significantly less money over the long haul. Instead of spending $3,000 or $3,500 a month on your rent, you'll buy a unit for say $150,000, $200,000,
$300,000,
maybe $300,000, and then there'll be a usage fee, which is going to cover the extras, the cleaning and the meals or whatever.
So it's still very much like living in a retirement community, except rather than just paying rent, you're paying a usage fee, plus you're purchasing the right
to use that Yes.
dwelling.
And it's called a life lease. And when I first heard life lease, I thought, okay, so I get to live in it until I die, and then it reverts back to the original person. But that's not really accurate. You get the right to live in it until you die, but then your estate has the right to sell it. And you can actually sell it too if you have to move out for whatever reason or go into a higher care facility or something. You are allowed to sell your lease to another person. Now the management company has to sell it, and there is some fees involved, anywhere from 3% to 10% of the value to sell to the next person. But the beauty is the value could go up as well.
Because it's more like real estate.
Yes, but the difference is you have no title.
Okay.
You have a document that says you have the right to have that property for the rest of your life, and you have the right to transfer it to another, that right to another person.
And for how many years? Is there a timeline on this? Okay.
No. So that's
So it's really a forever lease.
Yes.
That you're purchasing. So when we say life lease, it's kind of confusing.
Yes.
So it's really a forever lease.
It's like ownership, but there is no formal title, and you can transfer that contract.
So is it registered?
Right. No.
So it's not registered at the land registry office as ownership?
No.
So you're buying, so is it kind of like you're buying into the corporation or into the development that owns the entire project?
No, you're buying that piece of paper that says you can live in that space till you die, and you can also transfer it to someone else, and the estate can transfer it to someone else. That's all you're getting is the piece of paper.
Okay, or I can sell it.
And the use of that room.
Right, or it's not necessarily just a room. It could be 1,000 square feet. Yeah, it could be 1,500 square feet. It could be...
Could be a little bungalow kind of thing within the development.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily small. It could be quite spacious.
Yes.
Okay. And so then once I don't want to use it anymore, maybe I don't want to live there anymore, I can sell that piece of paper to someone else. Live in that place. The rights to live there. Mm-hmm. And then I just pay my usage fee, which would be maybe a meal plan.
Cleaning, maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're becoming more and more popular in the Ottawa area. We're seeing more of them. And they seem to be a really nice alternative to having to maintain and take care of everything, or pay huge fees to somebody and have no right really to the ownership of it.
Right. And so for some seniors, it's a good alternative. You know, they're maybe selling the family home. They're coming out of it with $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in equity, and they'll go and buy one of these life leases, and their monthly costs are less than what they would be if they were just renting.
Way less.
Way less. And if they live, say, another 20 years or whatever, they still have something of value to
Because they go up in value as well.
They do, because property goes up in value.
Because the property itself is still increasing in value.
Yes. Right. But they now have something they can leave in their estate to family, rather than have used up all their money paying rent each month. So it's a different style. I highly recommend legal advice on this type of product. Don't just, again, go in with your eyes open and legal counsel on your side. Make sure you know what you're getting into. And that wraps up our show. So we need to tell the good folks how they can reach us if they'd like to send us in an email question or phone us with a question that they'd like to be heard on our show. We'd love that to happen. You can call us with your question at 613-860-4663, or you can email in a question to deckerteam@chri.ca, and we'd love to put it on an upcoming show.
We would. And even if you have more than a question, even if you have a suggestion for an entire show, we'd be quite willing to receive that suggested as well. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Decker team. It's been a pleasure once again.
Bye for now.